Welcome to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Christopher Holmes, host for this episode and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Isaac Dixon, who is a veteran, author, coach, professor, and HR guru. Welcome, Dr. Dixon.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Well, you have so many nuggets I know you're going to drop on our viewers and listeners today. So let's jump right in. In order for them to get a little bit about you and your background, where does it all begin for you?
Well, Dr. Holmes, it began for me in 1978 when I moved here to Portland. I was at the time working for a company called Manpower Temporary Services, and I worked in a branch in California and moved to Oregon to run the franchise operations here in Portland. It was a great learning experience. I learned a lot about the business from front to back, but most importantly of all, I developed a network of HR colleagues across the city. Many of them were clients of my company. And so that's kind of what really kind of helped jumpstart my HR career.
Awesome. So what led you to focus on the work in human resources?
Well, I think for me, people make organizations go, but they often are overlooked resources. I wanted to do whatever I could to try to change that dynamic and to try to make an impact on the profession. Because in 1978, in Portland, Oregon, there weren't a whole lot of Black men who were in these roles.
Oh, I can only imagine. So you being one of the first, probably of none that existed.
True.
So you're doing this work, you've been doing it for a long time, and you're still so committed to it. Have you seen any shifts?
Well, that's a good question. And I'd like to frame my response by talking about the fact that we're living through a second industrial revolution. And that revolution is being driven by the explosion of knowledge-based work. Yet we still continue to try to structure organizations and manage people like it's 1950.
Wow.
And, we're seeing stories now, lots of stories about employers who are struggling to get people to fill jobs. But conversely, huge numbers of people founding their own businesses. I've talked to lots of Generation Z people who are students in my classes or colleagues that work in other organizations. And these people have lived through two major recessions in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And the one thing I keep hearing is, if the bus is going to go over the cliff, I'd rather be at the wheel than be a passenger in the back.
Wow.
And I think the pandemic really heightened that for a number of people. That and the fact that they have proven over an 18-month period, they can be productive at home as well as driving across town, paying for parking, sitting in traffic. A lot of people just don't want to go back to that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a struggle for employers to think forward. Mm-hmm. And, really begin to reimagine what work and the workplace looks like.
Yeah, I totally agree. You talked about, this purpose of managing people, and that's going to definitely look different. But in your experience, as we talk about valuing employees, and we are now in this cusp of EDI, it's all over the place. How are organizations doing in that area?
Some are doing well, but there's a lot more that are really struggling. It's an area of emerging importance in the workplace. I've watched organizations launch their efforts with good intent, but then find themselves floundering because their efforts are not aligned with their mission, vision, and values. They're simply a checklist of activities. And when they get to the bottom of the list, game over, we go back to what we were doing. And the other key component that organizations of all types are beginning to realize is that executive support means more than a statement. Key executives have to immerse themselves in the work in order for it to have a long shelf life in their organization.
Mm. Wow.
So, mission, vision, values, it's got to become part of who we are,
Mhm.
not just something that we do. And you know as well as I do, in today's world of social media and transparency, you're going to get called out on this
Oh
stuff
yeah.
if you're saying one thing and doing something else.
Yeah, most
So
definitely.
that's the biggest change that I've seen. And unfortunately, in many cases, and I've seen this in organizations, public, private, large and small, they hand it to the HR people and say, here, you do this. And a lot of HR people have no background in this whatsoever.
Yeah.
Um, so it's going to be a learning period for a lot of folks. But I think that, as the road, as you've often heard the expression, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Um, you've got to start with an ending in mind, and then it's got to be closely aligned with who you are as an organization, your strategy, your mission, your vision, your values. Those are important, because otherwise what happens is that if things financially in the organization get a little tight, or the person who's kind of the catalyst leaves, then the DEI, EDI work all falls apart.
Let me ask you this question. Do you think that many companies really understand the level of diversity that exists among their employees, or are they focusing simply on maybe race, sex, gender?
That's a good question, and I have found more of the latter rather than the former.
Mm.
I don't think that they, I was part of a panel a couple of weeks ago where we put on a program in our Portland HR Management Association about intersectionality.
Mhm.
And I mean, we had, tons of comments in the chat, and these were HR people. The majority of them, they had never heard the term before.
Wow. Wow.
So, I mean, we have a lot of ground to cover, and we're going to have to, my approach to working with my clients in DEI work has been take people where they are, not where you wish they would be.
Yeah.
And you have to understand everybody's not in the same place.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So in your long career, who has had a tremendous impact on you?
Well, I would say the one person that had substantial impact, if I had to name one, on my career was my mother, Marilyn Dixon. Um, she was the person that taught me that HR even existed as a career. She worked in personnel for the Veterans Administration in Westwood, California.
Wow.
And so periodically when I was a teen, I used to sometimes go to the office and visit her, and I got to drive people crazy by asking lots of questions about what they were doing. But those visits helped me later make sense of the fact that HR was integral to how organizations ran.
Mm. And I'm sure she also expressed her passion for the work that she did. I'm sure that
Oh
rubbed
yeah,
off on you as well.
yeah. She really believed in uh, treating everybody with dignity and respect, no matter what their job was or what level in the organization they were. And she also taught me the importance of asking questions and then listening to what people tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good moment.
I
What's one thing you wish you would have known earlier in your career?
wish I had known how political the workplace can be. In the years I've been in the profession, I've often had people tell me, I don't do politics. My response is, dream on, my friend. Our workplaces are rife with political implications, and many key decisions are based in them. So that's the thing that I wish I had learned early on. I teach my HR students to become aware of politics in their organizations, to know who the key players are, and understand what their positions are on issues that HR cares about. They must also learn to develop relationships with those who have differing points of view and learn how to work through them. Um, Politics is part of life, and The sooner we understand that as HR professionals, the more effective we can be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, working in colleges and universities, they're just, I mean, it's rife with politics. So I learned how to listen to what people were saying, understand who key stakeholders were and what their interests were, and then find places where our interests aligned.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about this a little bit. Let's say you've got your mentees out there watching you, or maybe some students, or maybe even colleagues. They're looking at you and they're saying, wow, he's awesome, he's great. What advice would you give to somebody who potentially wants to do the work that you're doing?
I would say, for people who are early in their career, or they're just starting out, or they're not really sure about HR, I would advise them to work in as many functional areas of HR as they can. Work in compensation, benefits, recruiting, employee relations, labor relations. Do some of all of it, because I've seen people stovepipe their careers because they commit to one specialized area at the beginning and then they can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Sort of like being typecast as a bad guy in movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say the other thing is that if you are not real strong in data analytics, go to graduate school, go back to community college or someplace, pick up some courses, because that is the future. HR people have been traditionally knocked for their lack of financial savvy. I'm finding that my students that I see now are more and more aware of this. And many of them are business majors and HR minors. So those skill sets are really complementary. I think the other thing I would tell them that they need to understand that diversity, they need to understand DEI, and they need to become not only champions, but they understand how the pieces fit together. That diversity is in background is, and diversity in their background is what separates HR leaders over the course of their careers. And I think that that's going to become increasingly true as the U.S. workforce not only gets younger, but it gets more diverse.
Yeah.
I think that HR people are going to not going to be cut out of the same mold as they were 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. I think also to take the opportunity, if it presents itself, to work in areas outside of HR. I've worked in sales, I've worked in marketing, I've done a little bit, and all of those things have really helped me. One of the things that I found in our HR department at the institution where I was before I retired is that we weren't very good at asking our stakeholders what they wanted or needed. We didn't communicate very well with them at all. We sent lots of information to them about programs or benefits and stuff, but we didn't have any systematic or routine way to gather information. And so we became much better at polling, looking at the results of those polls, and getting that real-time feedback to help us shape, design, and then deliver products and services that people really wanted. I think what's hard for us as HR professionals to understand is that the world really has changed, and so much of people's lens that they come to the workplace with is based on their consumer experiences. So if they come into work and we got a website that looks like 1980 and it's page after page of just documents, they'll go somewhere else and they'll look it up on Google. I mean, so I think that it's why that different set of skills in HR, people who are tech savvy and web savvy, who understand how social media works and what a great platform it is for communicating with employees who don't read stuff much, but they'll watch a 2-minute video on something. I had some folks on my staff that were, just fresh out of college, and they would sit there and just look at the website and just like shake their heads. I said, okay, go to work on the website and you guys help fix it. And, more white space, less text.
Mhm.
I mean, some of the key things, and I look at, company websites a lot of time. I look at the HR pages, and there they are with page after page of, they empty the file cabinet and put it on the
Yep.
website. Okay, you want somebody not to read stuff, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
So having that variety of different skills and backgrounds on your team and being able to recognize what those key skills are is important, and understand that those key skill sets over time will change.
Yeah. Now, if we're talking about these changes, and you mentioned many of them, how do you yourself stay abreast of current trends in the field?
Well, uh, I'm a voracious reader, so I read everything from Fast Company to the Wall Street Journal. Uh, we live in a world that's highly connected, and virtually everything that happens involves people in some way, shape, or form. I also listen to my students. I ask my students questions, and their reactions to things gives me a real clue into what's going on today, but what also the future looks like. Um, I was fortunate when I was in Portland State, and I am still a member of this group, but they founded a PSU Collaboratory. And that is a cross-functional organization made up of students, faculty, and staff, where we look at and we get schooled in futures thinking.
Wow.
I would love to see every HR organization in every institution, company, um, become hubs of future thinking in their organizations. We spend a ton of money in the United States on reactive people stuff rather than thinking about things in the future,
Yeah.
and getting employees at all levels involved in helping shape what the future looks like. That's pretty cool stuff when you have the right tools, and you know what you're doing. But also too, it re-energizes the entire organization.
Yeah.
So our collaboratory, we have the PSU Collaboratory has a website now, and it's available for people to take a look at. But that kind of future thinking, and Dr. Laura Nissen helped drive that program. It's been a real godsend to people, and they've come out with some pretty cool ideas for changing the way that university interacts with faculty, staff, and student now and in the future.
Oh, wow. That sounds awesome. So people listening, think about that. He's dropping nuggets. He's giving it to you for free. So in this career, what would you say has been your biggest accomplishment to date?
Wow, I was noodling over that one when I read the question earlier, and for me, I think my biggest accomplishment has been the fact that I've been an adjunct instructor at Portland State for more than 17 years.
Wow.
I've done so throughout a significant portion of my professional life, and I have written literally hundreds of recommendation letters in support of students applying for HR jobs,
Mm.
appointments to military academies. Two of my former students are U.S. Army officer candidates at Fort Benning now as we speak. And as a former Army officer, that felt pretty good to try to help them get into the academy. Many of my former students now are also HR managers and directors and professionals in all types of companies, not-for-profits, and other types of organizations. So I routinely and regularly get career counseling advice, or they want to bounce ideas off me, and that's been the one of the biggest accomplishments. I think next to that, moving the profession forward and inspiring young HR professionals of color to enter the field and stick with it.
Wow.
That's been something I've really been proud of.
So you've got many things that you are proud of, but I know those things didn't always come easily. So you've probably had a few bumps in the road. So what have been some of your challenges, and how did you overcome them?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, when I formally started in HR in 1978, there were not any other men of color in the profession in Portland area. So I moved to Oregon, as I told you, to run a franchise for Manpower, and the entire industry in Portland at that time was very white.
Mm.
Over the next 5 years, I found allies to work with, and helped recruit some people from diverse backgrounds to work in our branch offices. And some of those people went on to HR careers in other companies. So, it's show one how to help one kind of thing, and that really did work. So that's been it was one of the biggest challenges. It still is nationwide. HR professionals don't reflect the diversity of the workforces that they manage. And that's going to be a challenge for the profession going forward. There need to be more people of color in at the director level and above, because they're the policymakers in many organizations. And also too, just not people of color, but people from all kinds of backgrounds. There is so much talent that we're missing out on when we don't invite everybody to the table.
I definitely agree. So answer this question for me. How do you define success?
Well, I define success as starting with your ending point in mind and accomplishing your goals. I also define it by reaching your goals by helping others reach theirs. It means success means nothing if you can't share it with other people. And helping other people be successful, to me, is what being successful truly is all about.
And I can hear the pride in your voice when you talk about your students and what they're doing, and to know that maybe you played a small role in helping them get to where they are. As an educator, I know how important that is, because it is your life's work. We give so much of ourselves to our students. So our goal is that they live their best life in terms of it being fulfilled and goal oriented, and that they are making a difference for other people the way that we try to make a difference for them.
You bet.
So
absolutely.
Thank you so much for doing that. And as a veteran, thank you so much for your service. And once again, you've done so much. You've done so much. It's amazing. So what's next? Before you wrap up your career and decide to retire, if you decide to retire, what do you see yourself doing?
Well, I have my own consulting firm now. And I've been doing a lot of DEI work with clients here in the Pacific Northwest. I still teach at Portland State, and I'll be teaching a course for Warner Pacific University during the summer, HR related course. So, those are the things I'm kind of doing professionally. But I also have a active volunteer life too. I will be chair of the board of Central City Concern, the largest nonprofit here in the Portland area fighting homelessness.
Oh, wow.
And I've been part of that board for 5 years now. And, it is a reminder. Every board meeting is a reminder that homelessness can happen to anyone. And it fuels my passion for the fact that, we're the wealthiest nation on the planet, and we don't spend nearly enough money on helping people live their best lives.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, again, thank you for that work. That's tremendous work. But if you really want to have a challenge in the EDI world, come down south. we could definitely use your help down here with that work.
Well, Portland, Oregon had until the 1960s laws in the state constitution that Black people couldn't own property here.
Yeah. I visited Portland, and when I visit places, I like to really get the history of those cities or states.
Oh, and, yeah.
I was really, really taken aback about some of the things I learned about Portland.
Yeah, people think it's, this really liberal place. Portland is, but Oregon generally, not so much.
Yeah.
It is a past that a lot of people don't want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about this. How has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network enhanced your career?
That's a great question. And I had a moment to jot my answer here, at least some key points. So I want to refer to that. I think for me personally, it exposed me to some of the great minds in the country. The organization is made up of women and men who are reaching for the stars and have young people join us all the time. And I think the shared experience of those that have gone through the journey for gaining admission to the academy is also very important, because that journey for Black scholars is not the same as it is for others.
Yeah.
So I think that mutual support is absolutely critical. I have been fortunate enough to, I think in the last year, I've sat on 3 dissertation committees as a content expert, and 2 of those were students of color. So it's great to see students of color committing to the work, doing outstanding research, and having an opportunity to join the academy.
Yeah.
And the Black Doctoral Network has been a part. I got my doctoral degree in 2009, and so I think the year after or 2 years after I joined BDN, and been a member ever since.
Oh, wow. We are so glad that you made that decision. We're so glad to have you as a member of BDN. Thank you so much, Dr. Dix, for joining me today. It has been a pleasure. Please tell our viewers and listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you do.
Oh, sure. Well, there's a couple of places at least. One, of course, is LinkedIn. Just type in my name, Isaac Dixon, PhD, and it'll take you straight to my page. And you can go to my website, Vista, VISTA, HRconsulting.com. And you can also see my background there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for sharing with us today. I'm sure that you've inspired somebody out there and also made some people really think about the work that they do in HR. Please be sure to stay connected to the Black Doctoral Network and connect with us on all of our social media channels. Thank you for joining us today for the Black Doctors Talk podcast. We hope you will join us again next time. But for now, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to tell a friend. Thank you so much, Dr. Dixon.
Thank you again. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir.